He didn't notice the waitress until the paper touched his hand. Your fiancé sold you out. They're in position. His blood turned to ice. 3 seconds to decide if he was going to die in a place that charged $42 for carbonara, because the woman he was supposed to marry had just sold him to his enemies. He was the most feared man in Seoul, and tonight he was going to bleed out under warm, recessed lighting because he'd trusted the wrong woman. Welcome to K-fairytales stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Kang Min-ho's fingers closed around the note without hesitation. His dark eyes flicked to the woman who'd handed it to him. Black waitress, maybe 24, with curves that made men stupid and eyes that suggested she wasn't. She'd already turned away, moving between tables with practiced efficiency, like she hadn't just handed Seoul's most dangerous crime boss evidence of his own assassination. Across from him, Yuna smiled. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect lie. His fiancée of 6 months sat there sipping wine that cost more than most people's rent, completely unaware that he now knew what she'd done. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she was counting the seconds until the bullets came. Min-ho's hand moved to his phone beneath the table. 1 text, 2 words. His second-in-command would understand. But his eyes tracked the waitress as she disappeared into the kitchen, her natural hair pulled back in a tight bun, her movements careful and controlled. She'd just saved his life. Question was why. You're distracted tonight, Yuna said, her voice honey-sweet with underlying poison. Is something wrong? Everything was wrong. His security team should have caught this. The restaurant was supposed to be swept. Instead, he was sitting in the center of what was probably a very well-planned ambush, with a woman who'd shared his bed plotting his murder. Just thinking about the merger, Min-ho said smoothly. His reputation wasn't built on panic. It was built on control. The Japanese are being difficult. Yuna's smile widened. She thought she'd won. Thought he was too distracted by business to notice the way her eyes kept flicking to the entrance, waiting for something. Someone. The kitchen door swung open. The waitress emerged with their entrees, moving with the same careful precision. When she set his plate down, her hand brushed his shoulder. Another note slipped into his jacket pocket so smoothly he almost missed it. Back exit 3 minutes. Alone. Min-ho cut into his steak like a man with all the time in the world. Yuna watched him, and he could see the calculation in her eyes. She was wondering if she'd made a mistake. Wondering if somehow he knew. He did now. Excuse me? Min-ho said, setting down his fork. Restroom. Yuna's smile faltered, just slightly. Just enough. Of course. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket over the gun he always carried, and walked toward the back of the restaurant like a man who had no idea he was walking away from his own murder. The restroom hallway led past the kitchen, past the storage rooms, to an emergency exit that opened onto the alley behind the building. She was waiting there in the shadows, still in her server's uniform, but her posture had changed. No longer the submissive waitress. Now she stood like someone who knew how to handle herself, her back against the brick wall, her eyes scanning the alley with the awareness of someone trained for combat. Talk, Min-ho said quietly. His hand rested on his weapon. You have 2 minutes before my men arrive, and if this is a setup, you die first. Kwon Hyun-woo hired me 3 weeks ago, she said, her Korean accented but clear. Said he needed someone on the inside at this restaurant. Said he was planning something big. Kwon Hyun-woo. The name made Min-ho's jaw tighten. His former lieutenant. The one who'd tried to stage a coup 6 months ago and failed. The one who'd disappeared into the underground, promising revenge. You work for Kwon. Worked, she corrected, past tense. He hired me to poison your drink tonight. Said it would be clean, painless, perfect. Said your fiancée was in on it. That she'd make sure you didn't suspect anything. Min-ho's finger found the trigger of his weapon. So why warn me? She met his eyes, and he saw something there that surprised him. Conviction principle. Things that didn't belong in his world. Because I'm not a murderer. I took the job because I needed money. Needed to send it back home to my family in Chicago. But killing a man in cold blood? She shook her head. That's not who I am. So you're just going to walk away? Min-ho studied her face, looking for the lie, the trap. Kwon will kill you for this. Probably. Her smile was bitter. But at least I'll die knowing I didn't become a monster for a paycheck. She pushed off the wall, started to walk past him toward the mouth of the alley. Min-ho's hand shot out, catching her wrist. She went still, her body tensing like a spring ready to release, and he realized she actually knew how to fight. Interesting. What's your name? Amara. She didn't pull away from his grip. Just stood there, waiting to see what he'd do. Amara Wells. You just made yourself a target, Amara Wells. Minho released her wrist slowly. Kwon doesn't forgive betrayal. Neither does Yuna, apparently. I know, Amara's eyes held his. But I'd rather be a target with a clear conscience than a rich woman with blood on her hands. Something shifted in Minho's chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Respect, maybe, or recognition. This woman, this stranger, had chosen principle over survival. In his world, that made her either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Possibly both. Come with me, he said. She laughed, actually laughed. So you can kill me privately instead of publicly? So I can keep you alive. Minho pulled out his phone, sent another text. Kwon knows you warned me. He'll send people after you tonight. Tomorrow at the latest. You have nowhere to go. No one to protect you. He looked at her. I can give you both. In exchange for what? Information. Everything you know about Kwon's operation. His location, his plans, his connections. Minho's voice was cold, businesslike. And after that, you work for me. Amara's eyes narrowed. I don't work for criminals. Then you die for principles. Your choice. She stood there in the alley. This woman who'd walked into his life 3 minutes ago and turned everything upside down. And Minho could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Integrity versus survival. Fine, she said finally. But I'm not doing anything illegal. I'll give you information. I'll work whatever legitimate job you give me. But I'm not crossing that line. Agreed? Minho held out his hand. Do we have a deal? Amara looked at his hand for a long moment, then shook it. Her grip was firm, certain, the handshake of someone who kept their word. Deal. 3 seconds later, the back door of the restaurant burst open. Minho moved instinctively, pulling Amara behind him, his weapon drawn before his conscious mind processed the threat. But it was just Baek Do-hyun, his second in command, with 4 security personnel fanning out behind him. Boss, Do-hyun's eyes flicked to Amara, then back to Minho. We got your alert. The restaurant's surrounded. Kwon's men are positioned at every exit except this one. Yuna? Still at your table? Playing the worried fiancé. Do-hyun's expression was grim. She doesn't know we know. Minho felt the familiar coldness settle over him, the emotional detachment that made him dangerous. Yuna had shared his bed, his home, his plans. She'd smiled while plotting his murder, kissed him while counting his money, pretended to love him while selling him to his enemies. She would pay for that. Extract everyone through the kitchen, Minho ordered. Alert the owner, get civilians out quietly. I want Kwon's men to think I'm still inside. He glanced at Amara. She comes with us. Do-hyun's eyes lingered on her for a moment, suspicious, calculating. Who is she? The woman who just saved my life. Minho's hand found the small of Amara's back, guiding her toward the waiting car. And probably signed her own death warrant in the process. The drive to Minho's safe house took 40 minutes through Seoul's late-night traffic. Amara sat in the backseat beside him, silent, her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes tracking every turn, every street sign, cataloging escape routes like someone who'd learned not to trust anyone. Smart woman. Minho made calls, his voice low and controlled as he coordinated the response. By the time they pulled through the gates of his Gangnam compound, he'd ordered surveillance on Yuna, protection details on his key personnel, and a full sweep of every property he owned. One betrayal could mean dozens more. Trust was the first casualty of treachery.
The safe house was actually a penthouse, 40 floors above the city, with security that could stop a small army. Minho watched as Amara took it in, her expression carefully neutral, but he could see her processing everything. The expensive art, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the casual display of wealth that exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. You can stay here tonight, Minho said, removing his jacket. His shoulder holster came next, the weapon placed carefully on the entry table. Tomorrow we'll discuss long-term arrangements. Amara turned to face him, and the movement made him notice things he'd been too focused to see before. The curve of her hips in that server's uniform, the way her natural hair caught the light, the fullness of her mouth. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with Seoul's standard aesthetic, and everything to do with the kind of raw, honest sensuality that bypassed intellect and went straight to instinct. Dangerous thoughts for a man who'd almost been killed tonight. Long-term arrangements, Amara repeated. You mean like witness protection? I mean like employment, protection, a place in my organization. Minho poured himself whiskey, neat, and let the burn focus his thoughts. You know too much now to go back to your old life. Kwon will hunt you, so will Yuna's family once they realize you were involved in exposing her. I didn't sign up for this. No, you signed up to poison me. This is what happens when you develop a conscience. Minho's smile was sharp, humorless. Welcome to the consequences of doing the right thing. Amara flinched, and he saw he'd struck a nerve. Good. She needed to understand exactly what she'd walked into. His world didn't reward goodness. It punished it, exploited it, destroyed it. There's a bedroom down the hall, Minho continued. Food in the kitchen. My people will bring your things from your apartment tomorrow. I didn't agree to move in with you. You agreed to work for me. This is where you'll be safest. He finished his whiskey, set the glass down with deliberate control. Unless you'd prefer to take your chances on the street, I can arrange that too. She glared at him, and Minho felt something unexpected. Amusement. When was the last time someone had looked at him with anything other than fear or calculation? This woman, this stranger, looked at him like she wanted to throw something at his head. Refreshing. Fine, Amara said through gritted teeth, but I'm not your prisoner. If I'm staying here, I come and go as I please. With security, non-negotiable. With security, she agreed reluctantly. And I want my own space, my own room, my own bathroom, my own— You'll have the entire East Wing. Minho gestured down the hallway. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, private living area. Satisfied? Amara blinked, clearly not expecting that. Oh, that's actually reasonable. I'm not a monster, Amara. Just a man who values his survival. Minho moved past her toward his own wing of the penthouse. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start extracting everything you know about Kwon's operation. He was almost to his bedroom when her voice stopped him. Thank you. Minho turned. Amara stood in the hallway, still in her server's uniform, looking small and vulnerable and impossibly brave in the middle of his fortress. For what? For not letting me die on principle. Her smile was sad, self-aware. Even if staying alive means working for you, get used to compromises, Amara. They're the only thing that keeps people breathing in my world. Minho opened his bedroom door, then paused. And for what it's worth, you did the right thing tonight. Even if it was the stupid thing. He closed the door before she could respond, cutting off whatever she might have said. But as he stripped off his shirt and prepared for the night ahead, coordinating Kwon's elimination and planning Yuna's downfall, part of his mind stayed on the woman down the hall, the woman who'd saved his life. The woman who was about to discover that working for Kang Min-ho meant surrendering every assumption about right and wrong. The woman whose conscience was going to get her killed, unless he could teach her to be more like him. Cold, calculating, capable of doing whatever survival required. But as Min-ho stared out at Seoul's glittering skyline, he realized he didn't actually want that. Didn't want to watch another good thing get corrupted by his world. Maybe, just maybe, he could keep her intact. Keep that fire burning behind her eyes. Keep her from becoming like everyone else who served him. It was a dangerous thought. A weak thought. But as he finally fell asleep, his last conscious consideration was of brown eyes and natural hair and a woman who'd chosen conscience over currency. God help him. He was already obsessed. Morning arrived with Seoul traffic noise and the smell of coffee from the kitchen. Min-ho woke at dawn like always, his body trained to minimal sleep, maximum efficiency. He showered, dressed in a crisp suit, and emerged from his wing to find Amara already awake, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows with a mug in her hands. She'd changed out of the server uniform into clothes that must have come from her overnight bag, jeans that hugged curves that had no business being that distracting, a simple white t-shirt that somehow looked better than it had any right to. Her natural hair was loose around her shoulders, catching the morning light. She turned when she heard him, and Min-ho saw she'd barely slept. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Couldn't sleep? He asked, moving to the coffee maker. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw different scenarios. Amara's voice was rough with exhaustion. All the ways Kwon might come after me, All the ways I screwed up my life by giving you that note. Regrets? No. She met his eyes. Just fear, which I'm told is the appropriate response to becoming a target of organized crime. Minho felt his lips twitch. Actual humor. Rare. Fear keeps you alive. Complacency kills. Comforting. Amara returned her attention to the view. Do you ever look at the city and wonder if what you do is worth it? All the violence, all the blood, all the compromises? No. Minho's answer was immediate, honest. I look at the city and see power structures, territory, resources, threats. He moved to stand beside her. Sentimentality is a luxury I can't afford. That sounds lonely. It was. But Minho wasn't about to admit that to a woman he'd known for less than 12 hours. Instead, he changed the subject. We start debriefing in an hour. Do-hyun will be here with a recording team. I need everything you know about Kwon. Locations, contacts, habits, weaknesses. And after that, we decide what to do with you. Minho's eyes tracked her profile, the elegant line of her neck, the way morning light painted gold across her skin. What skills do you have besides waiting tables and developing inconvenient moral codes? Amara's laugh was unexpected, genuine. I have a degree in hospitality management. I speak 3 languages. I can manage events, coordinate logistics, handle high-pressure situations without falling apart. She looked at him. I also know how to kill someone 16 different ways, courtesy of my brothers, who all served in the military. Minho's interest sharpened. Military family? South Side Chicago family that believed in being ready for anything. Amara's smile faded. My oldest brother didn't come back from Afghanistan. My second brother came back different, broken. My youngest brother is still active duty. They all taught me how to protect myself before I was old enough to understand why I'd need to. I'm sorry about your brothers. Don't be. Amara's voice hardened. They made their choices. I made mine. We all live with the consequences. Before Minho could respond, his phone buzzed. Do-hyun, right on schedule. The debriefing would start in 30 minutes, which gave Minho just enough time to prepare Amara for what was coming. The men who interview you today will be thorough, he said carefully. They'll push, test your story, look for inconsistencies. Don't take it personally. It's their job to protect me. By assuming I'm lying? By assuming everyone is lying until proven otherwise. Minho moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Trust is earned in my world, Amara. You saved my life last night, which buys you consideration, but it doesn't buy you trust. Not yet. How do I earn that? Time, consistency, survival. His hand rose without conscious thought, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. The contact sent unexpected heat through his system. Prove you're exactly what you appear to be. A woman with principles who made a choice. No hidden agendas, no clever betrayals. Amara didn't pull away from his touch, just stood there, eyes locked on his, something electric building in the space between their bodies. And if I prove that, if I earn your trust, what then? Then you become valuable. Minho's thumb traced her jawline, and he watched her breath hitch. And I protect what's valuable. The moment stretched, suspended, charged with possibility. Then Minho's phone buzzed again, shattering the spell. He stepped back, creating professional distance, ignoring the way his body protested the movement. Do-hyun is here. Time to work. The debriefing took 6 hours. Do-hyun and 3 other security specialists took Amara through every detail, multiple times, looking for inconsistencies, recording everything, building a comprehensive picture of Kwon's operation from the inside. Amara handled it like a professional, never wavering, never changing her story, answering every question with the kind of exhausted patience that came from telling the truth. Minho watched from behind one-way glass, analyzing not just her words but her body language, her micro-expressions, the way she held herself under pressure. She was telling the truth. He'd bet his life on it, which, technically, he already had. By the time they finished, Amara looked ready to collapse. Do-hyun emerged from the interview room looking satisfied. She's clean, he said. Everything she's told us checks out. Kwon recruited her through a front company, paid her in cash, kept her isolated from the rest of his operation. She probably knows less than she thinks she knows, but what she does know is accurate. Recommendations? Keep her close. Use her for legitimate business operations, nothing criminal. She's smart, capable, and surprisingly resilient for someone who just stumbled into our world. Do-hyun paused. But, boss, be careful. She's not like the others. She actually believes in things. That makes her dangerous in a different way. Min-ho knew what he meant. People with principles were unpredictable. They made choices based on morality instead of pragmatism. They'd sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like honor and integrity. They were also rare enough to be precious. I'll handle it, Min-ho said. Thank you, Do-hyun. After his second-in-command left, Min-ho returned to the main living area to find Amara exactly where he'd left her, sitting on his couch, staring at nothing. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the toll the day had taken. Exhaustion, yes, but also the beginning of understanding. She was starting to grasp exactly what world she'd entered. How did I do? She asked quietly. You convinced them you're telling the truth. Min-ho poured her water, brought it to where she sat. Which means you convinced me. So what happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow we start building your new life. Min-ho sat down across from her, maintaining professional distance, even though part of him wanted to close the space between them. I'm putting you in charge of my hospitality operations. Restaurants, hotels, event spaces, all legitimate businesses, all above board. Amara's eyebrows rose. You're serious? I need someone I can trust running those operations. Someone who actually has experience, who won't steal from me, who has enough integrity to tell me the truth even when it's inconvenient. Min-ho leaned forward. That's you, if you want the job. What's the catch? The catch is that working for me means being associated with me. Your reputation will be tied to mine. Some people will assume you're complicit in everything I do. Others will try to use you to get to me. His eyes held hers. You'll never be completely safe again. Never be completely anonymous. Never be able to walk away without consequences. Amara processed that, and Min-ho could see the moment she understood. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a life sentence. Once she accepted, she'd be his, not in the sense of ownership, but in the sense of permanent association. She'd be Amara Wells, the woman who worked for Kang Min-ho. That label would follow her forever. I accept, she said finally. But I want something in return. Name it. Help me bring my mother to Seoul. She's still in Chicago, still struggling, still living in the neighborhood where my brothers grew up. Amara's voice shook slightly. I send her money every month, but it's not enough. I want her here, safe, where I can take care of her. Min-ho didn't hesitate. Done. I'll have immigration specialists handle the paperwork. She'll have a visa within 2 weeks, residency within 6 months. Just like that? Just like that. Min-ho stood, offered her his hand. Welcome to your new life, Amara Wells. Try not to die in it. She took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. They stood close, too close, and Min-ho felt it again. That pull, that magnetic draw toward something he shouldn't want, shouldn't pursue, shouldn't even consider. But God help him. He was considering it. Amara's eyes dropped to his mouth, then back up, and he saw the same awareness there, the same impossible attraction, the same understanding that acting on it would complicate everything. I should go rest, she said, but she didn't move. You should, Min-ho agreed. His hand still held hers. Neither of them moved. Then Amara's phone rang, shattering the moment. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, and Min-ho watched her expression transform from awareness to horror as she looked at the screen. It's a video message, she whispered. From Kwon. Min-ho took the phone from her shaking hands, opened the message. Kwon's face filled the screen, smiling his predator smile, standing in what looked like an empty warehouse. Hello, Amara, Kwon said pleasantly. I thought you might want to see what happens to people who betray me. The camera panned, and both Min-ho and Amara went rigid. There, tied to a chair, beaten and bloodied, was a young man who looked enough like Amara to be family. Your cousin Marcus, Kwon continued. He's been very talkative, told us all about your family in Chicago, your mother's address, your brother in active duty, even your nephew. The 6-year-old who just started first grade. Kwan's smile widened. I'm going to kill one of them for every day you don't return to me, starting with Marcus here. Unless, of course, you'd like to negotiate. The video ended. Amara collapsed against Minho, and he caught her without thinking, his arms coming around her as she shook. He has my cousin. He's threatening my family. My nephew. My God. My nephew is 6 years old. Breathe. Minho's voice was hard, controlled. I'll handle this. How? How do you handle someone threatening to kill a 6-year-old? By killing him first. Minho pulled out his phone, started making calls. Do-hyun, I need a team ready to move in 30 minutes. Full tactical American operation. Chicago South Side. He paused. Kwan's threatening civilians. Family members, children. Find them first. Extract them. Bring them here. Amara looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. You can do that? Just extract people from another country? I can do anything with enough money and the right connections. Minho cupped her face, forcing her to focus on him. Your family will be safe, your cousin will be recovered, and Kwan will pay for every second of fear he's caused you. I promise. Why? Amara's voice broke. Why would you go to all this trouble for someone you barely know? Because she'd saved his life. Because she'd chosen principle over survival. Because something about her called to the part of him that remembered being human before this world had turned him into something cold and calculating. But Minho didn't say any of that. Instead, he said something simpler, something true in a different way. Because you're mine now, and I protect what's mine. 22 hours later, Amara's mother, her cousin Marcus, and her young nephew Tommy landed at Incheon International Airport under heavy security. Minho had moved mountains to make it happen, calling in favors from politicians, diplomats, and people whose names never appeared in public records. Amara stood in his private arrival terminal, pacing like a caged animal, wearing clothes Minho had sent to her room. Designer pieces that fit her curves perfectly, that made her look like she belonged in his world even though her eyes still held that edge of panic. When the doors opened and her family emerged, Amara broke. She ran to her mother, sobbing, and Minho watched from his calculated distance as the reunion unfolded. Marcus had bandages on his face from Kwan's beatings. Tommy clutched his grandmother's hand, too young to understand but old enough to sense danger. And Amara's mother, a woman in her early 60s with the same beautiful skin and fierce eyes, took in the private terminal, the armed security, and Minho himself with the assessment of someone who knew exactly what kind of man he was. Mama, Amara said through tears, this is Kang Minho. He's the one who saved you. Amara's mother approached slowly, studying Minho with the kind of scrutiny that would have made lesser men uncomfortable. You're the gangster my daughter works for. Yes, ma'am. No point denying what was obvious. And you brought us here because? Because your daughter saved my life, and I pay my debts. Minho met her eyes without flinching. Also because the man who threatened your family is my enemy, and protecting you hurts him. Honest, at least. Amara's mother held out her hand. Diane Wells, thank you for saving my family, even if your motives aren't entirely altruistic. Minho shook her hand, felt the strength in her grip. I've arranged apartments for all of you in a secure building I own. Security will be provided 24 hours a day until the threat is neutralized. Neutralized. Diane's eyes sharpened. That's a polite word for murder. Yes, ma'am, it is. Amara stepped between them, clearly terrified this was about to become a confrontation. Mama, please, he's helping us. I know, baby. Diane's expression softened as she looked at her daughter. I'm just trying to understand the cost. In my experience, men like Mr. Kang don't do favors without expecting payment. The payment is your daughter's loyalty and service, Minho said bluntly. She works for me now. That's the arrangement. Nothing more. Nothing more. Diane's look suggested she didn't believe that for a second, but she was smart enough not to push. Not here, not now, not with her grandson clutching her leg and her nephew swaying with exhaustion. Minho had his driver take them to the prepared apartments while he and Amara rode separately. She was quiet in the back seat, staring out at Seoul's nighttime lights, her hands twisted together in her lap. Thank you, she said finally. for everything you did, for moving that fast, for spending that much, for bringing them here safely. You're welcome. Minho studied her profile. But Diane's right. This doesn't come without cost. Your family is here because I made it happen, which means they're now associated with me. That makes them targets. I know. Amara's voice was small. I know I've put them in danger just by being near you. No. Kwon put them in danger. I'm keeping them alive. Minho shifted closer. But you need to understand something, Amara. The life you're living now, it's not temporary. You can't go back to who you were before. Your family can't go back to Chicago. Everything has changed. I know that too. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were fierce despite the tears. But they're alive. My nephew is safe. My mother isn't living in fear in that neighborhood anymore. Marcus is getting medical care. That's worth whatever price I have to pay. Something shifted in Minho's chest. This woman, she'd trade herself for her family without hesitation, would bind herself to him permanently if it meant keeping them safe. That kind of loyalty was rare, precious, dangerous. He wanted to keep it, wanted to own it, wanted her to look at him with that same fierce devotion. Dangerous thoughts for a man who'd built his empire on emotional detachment. The car pulled up to the building where Amara's family would be staying. High-rise, secure, with views of the Han River that probably cost more per month than most people earned in a year. Minho's building, his property, his protection extending over everyone inside. Go, he told Amara. Help them settle. I'll have everything they need delivered by morning. Clothes, food, documents, phones. Everything. Amara's hand found his in the darkness of the back seat. Will you come up? Just for a minute. I think my mother wants to properly thank you. Minho knew he should refuse, should maintain distance, should let this be a transaction instead of something personal. But when Amara's fingers laced through his, when her eyes held that vulnerable hope, he found himself agreeing. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. Tommy was already asleep on the couch, exhausted from travel. Marcus sat in a chair with ice on his face, looking at Minho with the wariness of someone who recognized danger. And Diane stood in the middle of it all, taking inventory, calculating the cost of everything she saw. This must be worth millions, she said quietly. It is, Minho confirmed. You'll live here as long as you need to. Rent-free, security provided, all expenses covered, in exchange for my daughter's permanent employment, in exchange for her safety and yours. Minho met Diane's eyes. I'm not a good man, Mrs. Wells. I've done things that would horrify you, but I keep my word. I protect my people, and I pay my debts. Your daughter saved my life. This is me returning the favor. Diane studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I believe you, mostly because I can see you care about her, even if you won't admit it. Mama, Amara protested, her cheeks flushing. Hush, baby. A mother knows. Diane's smile was knowing. I've seen how he looks at you, like you're something precious he's trying not to break. That's not how a man looks at an employee. Minho felt exposed, seen in a way that made him instinctively want to retreat. But he held his ground, held Diane's knowing gaze, and didn't deny what she'd observed. Because maybe it was true. Maybe somewhere in the past 48 hours, Amara had become more than just an obligation. I should go, he said instead of addressing it. There are things I need to handle. Kwon, Amara said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes. Minho moved toward the door. He made this personal when he threatened your family. Now he needs to learn what happens when you make things personal with me. Amara followed him into the hallway, closing the apartment door behind them. They stood in the elegant corridor, alone for the first time since the extraction, and Minho felt the tension crackling between them like electricity before a storm. What are you going to do to him? Amara asked. Do you really want to know? No. Her hand rose, rested against his chest, right over his heart. But be careful, please. I don't want to lose you after everything you've done for me. Minho caught her wrist, felt her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Worried about me, Amara? Yes, no hesitation. Because you've become important to me, and I don't know how to handle that. Neither do I. Minho pulled her closer, closing the space between them until he could feel her breath on his skin. You shouldn't care about me. I'm everything you should run from. I know. Amara's free hand came up to his face, tracing the line of his jaw. But I'm not running. Not anymore. Minho should have stepped back, should have maintained professional boundaries, should have done literally anything except what he did, which was lean down and capture her mouth with his. The kiss was nothing like he'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or tentative or careful. It was fire and desperation and months of tension compressed into seconds. Amara gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, backing her against the hallway wall, his body pressing into hers, his hands framing her face like she was precious, like she was necessary, like she was everything he'd been missing without knowing it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Amara's eyes were wide and dark with desire. That was a mistake, Minho finished, even though his body screamed that it was anything but. I shouldn't have done that. Why not? Because you work for me. Because you're vulnerable right now. Because getting involved with me will complicate everything and put you in even more danger than you're already in. Minho forced himself to step back, to create space, to think with his head instead of other parts of his anatomy. You deserve better than me, Amara. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? Her voice was sharp with frustration. Don't I get a say in this? Not until Kwan is dead and your family is permanently safe and you've had time to think clearly about what you actually want. Minho moved toward the elevator, needing distance before he did something else stupid. Go back inside. Take care of your family. I'll see you tomorrow. He was in the elevator with the doors closing before Amara could respond, but he saw the hurt flash across her face, saw the way she wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold, saw the exact moment she realized he was pushing her away for her own good. It was the right thing to do, the smart thing, the thing that would protect her from getting more entangled in his world than she already was. So why did it feel like the worst mistake he'd ever made? Kwon Hyun-woo died 3 days later in a warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul. Minho handled it personally, which was unusual. Normally, he delegated such tasks, but this was personal. This man had threatened Amara's family, had beaten her cousin, had sent a video threatening a 6-year-old child. For that, he would die slowly. Minho won't recount the details. Some things were too dark even for his conscience. But when it was over, when Kwon's body was being prepared for disposal and his operation was being systematically dismantled, Minho felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just the cold efficiency of a problem solved. Yuna's fate was different. She didn't die. Minho had something else planned for her. He had her arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence was overwhelming because Minho had made sure it was. By the time he was done, Yuna's family's company was bankrupted, their assets seized, their reputation destroyed. She'd spend the next 20 years in prison, watching her empire crumble from behind bars. Death would have been kinder. Minho knew that. That's why he chose the other option. When he finally returned to his penthouse, he'd been awake for 56 hours. He smelled like smoke and copper and decisions he'd never be able to take back. He showered for 40 minutes, trying to wash away the stain of violence, knowing it never really disappeared. Amara was waiting in his living room when he emerged, curled up on his couch with a book she wasn't actually reading. She looked up when she heard him, and the relief that flooded her expression was almost painful to witness. "You're alive," she said, standing. Disappointed? Relieved. She moved toward him, then stopped, maintaining the distance he'd established 3 days ago. "Is it over? Is Kwon dead? His operation dismantled. Your family is safe." Minho poured himself whiskey, needed the burn. "Yuna's in prison. Her family is destroyed. Everyone who helped them is gone. Gone as in dead or gone as in prison? Does it matter?" He drank, let the alcohol work its temporary magic. "Yes," Amara's voice was firm, "because I need to know what kind of man you are, what kind of man I'm falling for." Minho's hand tightened on the glass. "Don't fall for me, Amara. I'm not someone you can save. I don't want to save you. I want to understand you." She crossed the distance between them, bold despite his warnings. "You just spent 3 days hunting down the people who threatened my family. You spent millions extracting them from Chicago. You gave us a home, security, everything we could need. But you won't let me thank you. Won't let me get close. Why? Because I'm covered in blood. Minho set down the glass before he broke it. Because I just killed a man with my bare hands. Because I'm exactly the monster your mother thinks I am. No, you're not. Amara's hand found his face, forcing him to look at her. A monster wouldn't care that he killed someone. A monster wouldn't shower for 40 minutes trying to feel clean. A monster wouldn't push away someone he cares about to protect them. You don't know what I've done, the people I've hurt, the choices I've made. Then tell me. Her eyes held his. Tell me everything, and let me decide if I can handle it. So, Minho told her. Everything. His family's legacy of violence, his rise to power through calculated brutality, the people he'd killed, the lives he'd destroyed, the empire built on fear and blood. He told her about Yuna, about how he'd known she was using him but hadn't cared because he didn't know how to want anything real, about how love had always been a weakness he couldn't afford until she'd walked into his life and made him want things he'd never let himself consider. When he finished, he waited for her to run, to see him clearly and realize he was irredeemable. Instead, Amara stepped closer. Thank you for telling me. That's it? No judgment? No horror? Oh, there's horror. Her smile was sad. But I also see a man who's trying to protect me from himself, who thinks he doesn't deserve softness or kindness or love, who's so used to violence that he doesn't know how to accept tenderness. Minho's laugh was bitter. Very insightful. I'm right, though. Amara's hands framed his face. You're pushing me away because you think I deserve better. But Minho, what if I don't want better? What if I want you exactly as you are? You'll regret it. Maybe. But that's my choice to make, not yours. She pulled his face down to hers. Stop protecting me from you and let me decide what I can handle. When their lips met this time, it wasn't desperate or rushed. It was slow, deliberate, a conscious choice made by two people who understood exactly what they were getting into. Minho's hands found her waist, pulled her flush against him, and felt her curves mold to his body like she'd been designed to fit there. Amara, he breathed against her mouth. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters. Good, she whispered, because I'm tired of fighting this. Tired of pretending I don't want you. Minho lifted her, heard her gasp of surprise, and carried her toward his bedroom. No more words, no more protests, just two people surrendering to the inevitable pull between them, consequences be damned. What happened next was private, sacred, the kind of intimacy that didn't need narration. But when morning came, when sunlight painted gold across tangled sheets and bare skin, Minho understood something fundamental had shifted. He'd spent his entire life keeping people at a distance. Now Amara had crashed through every wall he'd built, and instead of feeling vulnerable, he felt alive. Actually alive, not just surviving. She stirred against him, her natural hair spread across his pillow, her body warm and soft against his. When she opened her eyes and smiled at him with such open affection, Minho felt something he'd never felt before. Peace. Morning, Amara murmured, tracing patterns on his chest. Morning. Minho caught her hand, brought it to his lips. Any regrets? Only that we waited so long. Her smile turned mischievous. Though I understand why. You needed to make sure I wasn't going to run screaming. Are you? No, I'm exactly where I want to be. She shifted closer, kissed him slowly. Though we should probably talk about what this means. For work, for my family, for everything. Minho had been thinking about that all night. It means you're mine now. Officially, publicly, mine. It means anyone who wants to hurt me will try to hurt you. It means your life gets more complicated, not less. I know. Amara sat up, the sheet slipping down in a way that made coherent thought difficult. But I also know that being with you feels right. Like I was supposed to walk into that restaurant, supposed to give you that note, supposed to end up here with you. Fate? Minho's voice was skeptical. Call it what you want. I call it paying attention to what matters. She turned to face him fully. You matter, Minho, and I'm not afraid of your world anymore. I'm part of it now. Before Minho could respond, his phone buzzed. Work, always work. But when he reached for it, Amara caught his wrist. 1 more minute, she said. Give me one more minute of just us before the world intrudes. Minho set the phone aside and pulled her back against him. One more minute, then another after that. Because for the first time in his life, work could wait. The world could wait. Everything could wait. This was more important. The peace lasted exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of Amara settling into her role managing his hospitality empire. 3 weeks of her family adjusting to life in Seoul. 3 weeks of stolen moments between them, of learning each other's rhythms, of building something that felt dangerously close to normal. Then Do-hyun burst into Minho's office with a tablet and an expression that meant serious trouble. "We have a problem, boss." He set the tablet on the desk. "The Nakamura syndicate is moving into Seoul. They're buying up territory, making alliances with local gangs, consolidating power. And they're specifically targeting your operations." Minho studied the intelligence reports. The Nakamura syndicate was Japanese yakuza, powerful and ruthless, and they'd been trying to gain foothold in Seoul for years. Kwan's death had left a power vacuum, and they were moving to fill it. How immediate is the threat? Very. They've already taken 3 of your clubs, 2 of your warehouses. They're bleeding your revenue and making you look weak. Do-hyun's expression was grim. They're also asking about Amara. Everything in Minho went cold. Asking what? Who she is? What she means to you? Where she came from? Do-hyun met his eyes. "Boss, they know she's the weak point. They're going to come for her. Double her security. Triple it. I want eyes on her and her family at all times." Already done. "But Minho, they're not going to stop. Not unless you make a statement. Show them that coming after what's yours has consequences." Minho knew what that meant. War. Actual war. The kind that would spill blood on Seoul's streets and draw attention from authorities who usually looked the other way. The kind of conflict that would put everyone he cared about in danger, including Amara. "Set up a meeting," Minho said finally, "with the Nakamura leadership. Neutral ground, full security protocols. If they want to negotiate, we negotiate. If they want war, we give them war." Do-hyun left to make arrangements. Minho sat alone in his office, staring at the intelligence reports, calculating odds and outcomes. Every scenario ended the same way. Blood, death, the potential loss of everything he'd built, or the potential loss of Amara. That thought crystallized his priorities with painful clarity. He'd burn his entire empire to the ground before he'd let anyone hurt her, would sacrifice everything he'd built, everyone who depended on him, every dollar and building and connection. For her, when had she become more important than everything else? Minho found Amara in one of his restaurants, overseeing a catering event, completely in her element. She wore professional clothes that hugged her curves perfectly, her hair pulled back, her smile bright as she coordinated with staff. This was where she thrived. In hospitality, in service, in creating beautiful experiences for other people. She looked up when she sensed him, and her whole face lit up. That smile, God, that smile made him want to be better than he was, want to deserve her. "Hey," she said, coming over to kiss him briefly. "I wasn't expecting you until tonight. We need to talk, privately." Her expression shifted immediately, reading the tension in his voice. "What's wrong?" Minho led her to a private office, closed the door, and explained the situation. Watched her face go from confused to concerned to frightened as she understood the scope of the threat. "They're coming after me because of you," she said quietly. "Because I matter to you." "Yes, then maybe I should leave. Go back to Chicago, take my family, disappear." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "You're not leaving. You're not running. We face this together. But if I'm the target, if I'm making you vulnerable, then that's my problem, not yours." Minho caught her face between his hands. "Listen to me, Amara. You're not collateral damage. You're not a weakness to be eliminated. You're the reason I'm willing to fight this war, because a life without you in it isn't worth protecting." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You can't mean that." "I do. God help me, I do." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. "You're mine, Amara. Mine to protect, mine to keep, mine to love. And anyone who tries to hurt you will learn exactly what I'm capable of." "I love you," she whispered. "I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you. I love you too." The words felt foreign on his tongue, but they were true. Terrifyingly, completely true. Which is why you're going to let me handle this. No arguments, no heroics, no trying to sacrifice yourself to keep me safe. That's not fair. You get to protect me, but I don't get to protect you? Exactly. Minho's smile was sharp. Because I'm very good at violence and you're very good at hospitality. Stay in your lane. Let me stay in mine. Amara hit his chest, but she was smiling through tears. You're impossible. I'm in love with you. Apparently, they're the same thing. They held each other in that private office while the restaurant hummed with activity outside. Minho memorized the feel of her in his arms, the scent of her hair, the sound of her breathing. If something went wrong in this war, if he didn't survive, he wanted this to be his last memory. Amara in his arms, telling him she loved him, choosing him despite everything. Promise me something, she said against his chest. Anything. Come back to me. Whatever happens with the Nakamura Syndicate, whatever you have to do, come back to me. Alive. In one piece. Ready to build the life we've been talking about. I promise. Minho tilted her face up, looked into eyes that held his entire future. I promise, Amara. I'll come back to you. It was a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it cost. The meeting with the Nakamura Syndicate happened in a neutral warehouse, both sides bringing equal security, both sides prepared for violence. Minho entered alone, as tradition dictated, and found himself face-to-face with Nakamura Kenji, the Oyabun who'd been trying to conquer Seoul for a decade. Kang Minho. Kenji's smile was predatory. The young emperor of Seoul, finally agreeing to meet with us. You requested negotiation. I'm here to negotiate. Minho's voice was flat, unemotional. State your terms. Simple. We want 40% of your operations. Clubs, restaurants, logistics, everything. In exchange, we leave your woman alone. No. Kenji's eyebrows rose. No? You haven't even considered our offer. There's nothing to consider. My operations aren't for sale. My woman isn't for negotiation. You have nothing I want except your absence from Seoul. Minho leaned forward. So let me make you a counter-offer. Leave now, voluntarily, and I'll let you live. Stay, and I'll destroy everything you've built in Japan, everyone you care about, every operation you've ever profited from. You're bluffing. Try me. Minho's smile was colder than winter. I've already started. While we've been talking, my people have been moving against your interests in Tokyo. Your warehouses are burning. Your accounts are being seized. Your protection rackets are collapsing. He pulled out his phone, showed Kenji live footage of fires, chaos, systematic destruction. This is what happens when you threaten what's mine. Kenji's face went purple with rage. You started a war. You started it when you asked about Amara. I'm finishing it. Minho pocketed his phone. Now you have a choice. Pull out of Seoul completely, or watch everything you've built turn to ash. What's it going to be? For a moment, Minho thought Kenji would choose violence. Saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of pride versus pragmatism. Then Kenji stood slowly. You're going to regret this, Kang. No. You're going to regret not taking my offer. Minho gestured toward the exit. You have 24 hours to evacuate your people from Seoul. After that, anyone wearing your colors is a target. And Kenji, if I hear your name associated with my city again, I'll come to Tokyo personally, and I won't be as merciful as I'm being today. Kenji left, and Minho stood alone in the warehouse, letting the adrenaline drain from his system. It wasn't over. Men like Kenji didn't surrender easily. There would be retaliation, assassination attempts, continued attempts to undermine his power. But he'd made his position clear. Amara was off limits, untouchable, worth burning the world for. When Minho returned to his penthouse, he found Amara pacing, wearing a path in his expensive carpet. She flew into his arms the moment she saw him, checking him for injuries, for blood, for evidence that something had gone wrong. I'm fine, he assured her. Everything went according to plan. What plan? What happened? Minho told her everything. About the threats, the counter-threats, the fires in Tokyo, the systematic destruction of Nakamura's empire. He watched her face go through emotions, horror at the violence, fear for what this meant, and something else, something that looked disturbingly like pride. "You destroyed his operations," she said slowly. "In Tokyo, while you were meeting with him. Yes, that's terrifying, and impressive, and terrifying. Welcome to my world." Minho pulled her against him. "But it's necessary. Men like Kenji only understand strength. If I'd negotiated, he'd see it as weakness and come harder. This way, he knows attacking me costs more than it's worth. What if he retaliates? He will, but we'll be ready." Minho tipped her face up. "Amara, I need you to understand something. Being with me means living with this threat. Constant vigilance, constant security, constant awareness that someone might try to hurt you, to hurt me. If that's not a life you can live, stop." Amara pressed her fingers to his lips. "I chose this. I chose you. I'm not going anywhere. Even knowing what I'm capable of? What I just did, especially knowing that." Her eyes were fierce. "Because you did it to protect me, to protect us. And yes, it's scary, but it's also real. You're real. This is real. And I'm not running from real anymore." Minho kissed her, deep and claiming, pouring every emotion he couldn't articulate into the connection between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he knew what he needed to do next. "Marry me." Amara blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Now, this week, as soon as legally possible." Minho dropped to one knee right there in his living room, pulled out a ring he'd been carrying for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. "I love you. I want you to be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours. Marry me, Amara." "This is insane," she whispered, but she was smiling. "We've only been together for 3 weeks. I've been in love with you since you handed me that note and saved my life. The rest was just denial." Minho stayed on his knee, holding the ring that had cost more than most people's houses. "So yes, it's fast. Yes, it's crazy, but I'm not waiting. Not when every day reminds me how fragile life is, how quickly things can be taken away. Marry me." "Yes." Amara pulled him to his feet, kissed him hard. "Yes, you impossible, dangerous, perfect man. I'll marry you." The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her, probably because Minho had spent 3 days working with a jeweler to ensure it was exactly right. Diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum, beautiful and substantial and exactly what she deserved. "When?" Amara asked, staring at her hand. "This weekend. Private ceremony. Just family. Nothing fancy." Minho pulled her close. "I want you officially mine as soon as possible. Want legal ties that make you untouchable. Want everyone to know that hurting you means war with me." So romantic. But Amara was laughing through tears. "You're proposing to protect me?" "I'm proposing because I love you. The protection is just a convenient bonus." Minho caught her mouth again, walked her backward toward his bedroom. "Now let me show you exactly how much I love you." What followed was private, passionate, a celebration of promises made and futures planned. And when morning came, when Amara lay against him wearing his ring and his marks and his heart, Minho finally let himself believe this was real. He'd found something worth more than power, worth more than his empire, worth dying for, worth living for. They married 5 days later in a private ceremony at Minho's penthouse. Amara wore a dress that somehow managed to honor both her Chicago roots and her new soul life. Her mother cried. Her cousin Marcus stood as her witness. And little Tommy served as ring-bearer, taking his responsibility so seriously that everyone smiled. Minho wore a traditional Korean hanbok for the ceremony, then changed to a Western suit for the reception. It was a fusion of cultures, of traditions, of 2 people from different worlds choosing to build something new together. "You're sure about this?" Diane asked Amara while they were getting ready. "Once you're his wife, there's no going back. You're bound to his world completely." "I'm sure, Mama." Amara's smile was radiant. "I love him, and he loves me. That's enough." "Love isn't always enough, baby." "No. But it's a start." Amara hugged her mother tight. "And he's a good man, Mama. Under all the danger and the violence, he's good. He protects what he loves. He keeps his promises. He makes me feel safe." Diane pulled back, studied her daughter's face. Then I give you my blessing, fully, completely. Be happy, Amara. You deserve happiness. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, meaningful. When Minho slid the wedding band onto Amara's finger, when she did the same for him, they both felt the weight of commitment settling like a comfortable burden. I love you, Minho said when it was his turn for vows. I love your courage, your conscience, your complete inability to ignore injustice even when it puts you in danger. I love that you chose me despite knowing exactly what I am. I promise to protect you, honor you, and love you until my last breath. You're my heart now, Amara. Everything I do for you. Amara's vows were equally simple. I love you for seeing me when I felt invisible, for saving my family, for being both the hardest and softest man I've ever known. I promise to stand beside you, challenge you, and love you through everything. You're my home now, Minho. Wherever you are is where I belong. When they kissed as husband and wife, the applause was loud and genuine. Even Do-hyun looked pleased, which was saying something. The reception was small, intimate, filled with people who actually mattered instead of the political circus most high-profile weddings became. Amara's family mingled with Minho's inner circle. Cultures collided in the best way possible. Late in the evening, Minho found Amara on the balcony, staring out at Seoul's lights, wearing his ring and his name and carrying his future. Mrs. Kang, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. That's gonna take some getting used to. Amara leaned into him, but I like how it sounds. Strong, certain, mine. You are mine, completely, legally, irrevocably mine. Minho kissed her neck. And I'm yours, forever, forever. Amara turned in his arms. That's a long time. Not long enough. Minho caught her mouth, tasted wine and promises. I could have 1,000 lifetimes with you and it wouldn't be enough. They stood together on that balcony, husband and wife, building something that shouldn't work but did. Love born from danger, partnership forged in fire, a future pulled from the ashes of their separate pasts. 3 months later, Amara discovered she was pregnant. She told Minho during breakfast, setting the positive test beside his coffee with shaking hands. He stared at it for a full 30 seconds like he couldn't process the information. Then he stood, crossed to her, dropped to his knees, and pressed his face against her still flat stomach. We're having a baby, he said in wonder. A baby? Are you happy? Amara's hands found his hair. Because I know we didn't plan this, know it's fast, but I'm terrified. Minho looked up at her, and his eyes were wet. Absolutely terrified, because now there's something else I have to protect. Someone else I could lose. But Amara, I'm also happier than I've ever been. We're having a baby. You're giving me a family. We're giving us a family, she corrected. Together, Minho stood, pulled her into his arms, held her like she was made of glass. I'm going to be a father. A good father, Amara said firmly. Because you know exactly what kind of father not to be. I don't know anything about being a parent. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. She kissed him softly. Like we figure out everything else. Together. The pregnancy was smooth, uneventful, blessed with the kind of mundane normalcy that felt like a gift after everything they'd survived. Amara's mother was over the moon, already planning nurseries and buying clothes. Marcus started taking security training from Do-hyun, determined to protect his cousin's child. Tommy asked a million questions about babies and promised to be the best big cousin ever. Minho was both the most attentive and most paranoid expectant father in Seoul's history. He had Amara's prenatal care handled by the city's best doctors, installed additional security, baby-proofed the penthouse before there was even a baby to protect. Read parenting books in 3 languages. You're going to drive yourself crazy, Amara told him when she found him reading about infant safety at 3 a.m. I'm trying to be prepared. Minho set the book aside. What if I'm not good at this? What if I mess up our child the way my father messed me up? You won't, because you're aware of the dangers, because you love me, because you already love this baby so much you can't sleep. Amara guided his hand to her growing belly. Feel that? That's your daughter, and she's going to love you. Daughter? Minho's eyes widened. We're having a girl? The ultrasound confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to tell you in person. Amara smiled at his expression. "We're having a daughter, Minho, a little girl who's going to have your eyes and my stubbornness and the best of both of us." Minho kissed her stomach, then her mouth. "Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For loving me. For giving me a family I never thought I'd have. Thank you for seeing me. For protecting me. For being exactly who I needed even when I didn't know it." Amara pulled him close. "I love you. I love you too. Both of you. My entire world." Their daughter was born on a spring morning when cherry blossoms painted Seoul pink and white. Labor was long but manageable. Minho held Amara's hand through all of it, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him, which somehow made her love him more. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming her displeasure at the world, Minho cried. Actually cried, tears streaming down his face as he held his child for the first time. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect. She is." Amara watched her husband fall in love with their daughter. What should we name her? They debated names for months. Korean names, American names, names that honored both their heritages. But looking at his daughter's face, Minho knew exactly what she should be called. "Grace," he said. "Grace Amara Kang. Because she's Grace I don't deserve, and she's named after the woman who saved me. Grace." Amara tested it, smiled. Perfect. They went home 3 days later. A family now. Complete and whole and terrifyingly precious. Minho's entire organization mobilized to protect the baby. Security was everywhere. Tommy appointed himself Grace's personal guardian. Diane moved into the penthouse to help. Life became a beautiful chaos of feedings and diapers and midnight lullabies. Minho, the feared crime boss of Seoul, could be found at 3 a.m. walking Grace around the penthouse, singing Korean songs his grandmother once sang to him, completely undone by this tiny human who owned him completely. "You've gone soft," Do-hyun observed one day, watching Minho make funny faces at Grace. "I've gone happy," Minho corrected, not taking his eyes off his daughter. There's a difference, and there was. The man who'd built his empire on fear and violence now built his days around a baby's schedule. The man who'd trusted no one now trusted completely in the family he'd found. 1 year later, Minho and Amara stood on their balcony again, Grace asleep in Amara's arms, watching Seoul's lights paint the night. "Happy anniversary," Amara said softly. "Has it really been a year? A year since you married me. 15 months since I handed you that note." She looked up at him. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Minho corrected, kissing her forehead. "Best decision was loving me despite everything. The note just started it. They stood together, husband and wife, parents, partners in everything, and watched the city that had tried to destroy them both now spread peacefully below. The Nakamura syndicate had never returned. Kwon was long dead. Yuna was still in prison. Every threat had been neutralized, every danger handled, every enemy defeated. They'd won. Not just survived, but actually won. Built something real from blood and fear and impossible love. "I'm pregnant again," Amara said suddenly. Minho went still. "What?" "3 tests this morning, all positive." She smiled at his stunned expression. "Surprise! You're going to be a father of 2. 2 children." Minho's hand found her flat stomach. 2 incredible, perfect children with the woman I love. How did I get this lucky? You chose to see me. You chose to save me. You chose love over fear. Amara kissed him softly. Lucky had nothing to do with it. This is what happens when you open your heart. "Minho, beautiful things grow." "I love you," he said. "My wife, my heart, the mother of my children, my salvation. I love you, Amara. I love you too. My husband, my protector, my partner, my home. Forever, Minho. Forever." They held each other on that balcony, their daughter sleeping between them, another child growing inside her, and Seoul spreading below like a promise kept. This was their happily ever after. Hard-won, blood-bought, absolutely perfect. This was grace undeserved and love unconditional and family chosen rather than given. This was everything they'd fought for. And it was worth every single battle,